Hey, what's up guys, this is Astranox and I'm back to another Epic 7 video. So in this one I want to talk about Chaos Sect Axe in Wyvern 11. I'll showcase him as well. And here's one of the runs. Of course it's either my Kise or Taranor Guard that's leading. It's more often Kise than Taranor Guard. Now my Angelica, she sometimes just ends up dying. And what happens is that my 3 damage dealers, they're able to take out the Wyvern, or I just die. So, but in most cases it's successful. My Chaos Sect Axe doesn't have that much attack. He's only like at low 2000, but he has decent speed. He's got some speed boots. The thing is, really, like, not running a 4 ice hero setup makes the boss go more often, so you have less time during the barrier, you have less time just in general to go. Like, he's getting that 10% combat readiness, 10% combat readiness every time your non-ice elemental hero goes. So I can definitely notice the difference. And I mean, the thing is, it's a second source of defense down debuff, so that's that, and it doubles your damage output against the target when you have defense down applied, and it's a 2-turn debuff, so it definitely ups the uptime on the debuff on the boss compared to Taranor Guard that is only 1-turn debuff. It is more reliable. I mean, if it doesn't get resisted, that's the thing. The beauty with a skill 1 defense down debuff is that it can trigger during a dual attack, and Taranor Guard is very good at that. So yeah, also you're not gonna deal 30% increased damage because you're not an ice hero. But let's say you've got Chaos Sect Axe, you invested quite a few Molagoras into him. Mine, his skills are all at 0. But he's got some good gear, and he can drop attack down debuff, which cuts the attack of the boss in half, and it's gonna affect him for a triple attack with the fireball barrage. So it helps there. But as you just saw, my Angelica, her stats, you could compare your Angelica to mine, and what she has is definitely, I would say, like around bare minimum. If you want to be able to kill the boss, you have to kill the boss after the first barrier. You cannot go in a second barrier if your Angelica just dies. So that's the thing. Now, yes, he's got the defense down debuff. That's good. 3-turn cooldown, lasts for 2 turns if it drops. I have him on Daydream Joker to up his damage output, but there's no attack buffer. He's plus 30 enhanced in his skill tree, and like I said, no Molagora invested. So really, the damage he's dealing is just from his gear and from the plus 30 enhance. If I had like a bunch of Molagoras invested into him, it would be much better. Now my Angelica, so that's what happens. Sometimes she will survive through the barrier, and during the barrier she will be able to heal herself, so she's ready for the next volley, like fireball volleys. But if she dies before, it's all on my damage dealers to take out the Wyvern before all my damage dealers are dead. But if you die, it's fine. It's fine, you don't lose energy. It's a bit of a casual aspect to the game. So basically, you could be running a team composition that just has like a 25% success rate, let's say, and you really want to farm that stage 11. You're free to play, and you don't want to be farming 10. Like, it's fine. You'll just eventually do it. You'll wipe, you'll die, you'll fail, but you'll still manage to complete runs. Every couple runs you'll be able to succeed, and it's fine because the amount of Sky Stones and energy that you have is limited compared to someone that will spend money in the game. So I mean, if you take it slow, you'll be fine as long as you consume all the energy that you get in a day. Now, like, you could be running Crozet in the front, you could be running Basque in the front, you could be running Crow in the front, you could even be running Fighter Maya in the front, because if you have her skill 2 max, she's gonna get defense buff every time the Wyvern attacks, and every time the Wyvern attacks, he will remove a buff on yourself unless you resist it. But yeah, Fighter Maya will keep on reapplying it. But she's light, so she's not getting that 30% damage reduction from being an Ice Hero. Yeah, she'll take that 30% increased damage. But yeah, so far so good. Went through the barrier and my Angelica's alive, so it's all good. But definitely, like, if you are struggling in Wyvern, I would say either use like Crozet or Basque or Crow in front if you don't have Angelica. But if you do have Angelica and you are struggling to keep her alive and she's dying too much, like too early before the barrier, you cannot have her survive until the barrier phase, just go and have another Soul Weaver, just help her out. I have a bunch of videos out. I have one with Aether. He's a really good single target healer. I'll show you my gear. I'll do another run. So Aether is a really good single targeted healer, and everyone has him. You can also be running, of course, DN with Angelica. That is the team that I usually run because her barrier just makes it so it's just enough for Angelica to survive. But she's also bringing that attack buff, which is increasing my team's damage, and I'm able to kill the Wyvern shortly after the barrier phase. It's just enough for that. Or you could be running Yuna. Like, Yuna definitely can replace DN. Just you might have more failed runs, but Yuna is free, and if you fail, it doesn't matter. You don't lose energy anyways. And Yuna really, like, is gonna speed up your runs with that. I mean, let's say you don't have DN, you don't have like, you could be running Hazel, but you're not gonna get that speed buff, and the boss will be gaining more combat readiness out of this. Where is it? It's here. Yeah, at the bottom. Increase the caster's combat readiness by 10%, and when the Wyvern slows itself down by a lot during the barrier phase, that 10% combat readiness is quite annoying. So yeah, you could be running also definitely can be running Hazel. You'll have attack buff. She actually has a pretty good healing output, so you could pair her with Angelica. And I mean, I didn't test Akatis yet, but with that attack down debuff on skill 1, the immortality, which might get removed from the Wyvern attacking. That's the thing, because it says, not this one, it is this here. Also, yes, your frontliner will lose 10% combat readiness every time the Wyvern attacks with this thing. And after attacking, attacks the same enemy 2 more times. If the caster has 2 or fewer debuffs, greatly increase the damage dealt. Attacks the front row first. That's the thing with stage 11. It always attacks the front row, so that's why it's actually easier than 10. If you have enough survival stats. Well, to be honest, if you're starting out in this game, 11 is not easier than 10, because you just need more stats. You need more survival on your front line. You need more stats. You could succeed 10 more often. But yeah, this skill dispels 1 debuff every time it goes unless you resist it. So yeah, I mean, it's been pretty successful, but to be honest, my Angelica, you could definitely be running your Angelica in front with Water's Origin artifact. if you are struggling to have her survive, I don't have it, unfortunately. I would definitely test it if I had it, but I don't. It is actually gonna lower the amount of stats that you need, and it's gonna buy you time to reach that barrier phase, and at that point she'll be able to heal herself back up. Just make sure that you can you take like between 21% to, let's say, 25% of your max health every time you get hit by that fireball volley barrage. And yeah, I mean, you will recover 8% of your health, and also you'll get at plus 15, you will get 15% combat readiness, which will counter the minus 10% combat readiness every time you're attacked by the Wyvern, and you will also gain that extra 5%, because that's definitely not helping out. So you need more speed on your Angelica if she dies. Now there's so many different team compositions that you can be running, but early on, if you're struggling, I would say Crozet or is the best frontliner, and then it would be Basque, and then it would be Crow if you're relying on a knight, if you don't have Angelica in front to tank. And if you want speed runs, at that point, if you have a pretty good success rate with a frontliner like Tywin, definitely use him. Rose or Tywin. I would say that Tywin is more preferable over Rose, because he also, I mean, he brings defense down, and he has that attack and crit chance boost on one damage dealer. Whoever is closest to 100% combat readiness will get the buff. And well, really quickly before I show my gear, that you would only be running these heroes if you can actually get into the barrier phase and not lose your frontliner. And you could go with a kamikaze setup. It's like a knight in front and triple damage dealers in the back, and you would just go all out on the boss, and you'll have to be able to survive. Your frontliner will have to survive until the barrier phase, and then you will kill the Wyvern shortly after that phase. Because Rose, she increased her own defense if her health is below 50%, but it will be removed, that's the thing. And Rose will be quite slow early on, unless you have amazing gear. And Rose, you can definitely use her in PvP as well, which is another plus. And you could definitely use her in other part of the game. But PvP, she's actually a top tier combat readiness booster. Thing is, you will need some speed on her. So unless you have really good gear, you might have to eventually like swap gear onto her to have her used in PvP as well, because you cannot have her slow. You need to initiate first. You need one combat readiness booster that's very quick, and then she goes second, and then boost the attack of your group plus boost combat readiness further, so your damage dealer can go afterward. But yes, she I would use her in an offensive setup, not like early on when you're struggling, because struggling is Crozet. 15% of his max HP. This scales off 15% of his max health, and every 2 turns. An attack down debuff will cut the attack of the Wyvern in half. Not only that, but it will affect all 3 attacks that it will do, so that is very good when it lands. And yeah, Basque, I mean, he has lower stats. I would definitely take Crozet first. And Crow. Crow is just like a brick wall, and he can help you a bit on the damage part. Depends if he survives. It depends how you're gonna set up your group. You could have him. You could just have him survive until barrier, and then his job is done if your damage dealer can take out the Wyvern. But if he somehow survives and then like does this thing, well, it's gonna deal some damage to the Wyvern, which is nice. But to be honest, with the triple damage setup, triple damage dealer setup so far, I prefer Chloe. Chloe, Taranor Guard, and Kise has been my favorite setup, because Chaos Sect Axe is dark, so it gives combat readiness to the boss, and the runs are... It depends. If you are getting, you're dropping that attack down debuff on the boss, it's definitely gonna help you out, but it's only one turn. Alright, so let me show my stats. But like I said in my previous videos, you could check my other videos to I talk more about the boss mechanics. But in this one, I just wanted to talk about team composition some more, and focus more on, let's say, players that are struggling. You could be running a knight, a frontliner like Crozet, Basque, or Crow, and then you could be running double Soul Weavers in the back with one damage dealer. If you do have Chloe, she would be your damage dealer, and you would rely on that 2% max health debuff that she applies. Everyone that attacks the boss will do 2% of the boss's health and damage, which is amazing. But here we go. CP. You could just make sure you survive, like I said before. Survive the damage, the area damage that you will take if you fail to break the barrier. Here's the skill ups first. But really, in this game, it's about building heroes that you can use in multiple areas of the game. Of course, if you can rely on a different hero than Aether for Wyvern 11, that'd be better, because you don't have to invest. I mean, you don't have to get Aether to... You don't need to get him to 6-star. That's the beauty of it, though. You can leave him as a 5-star. You don't even need skill ups if you have Angelica in front. But if you want him to be your dedicated healer, you're gonna need some crazy speed on him, and you will most likely need a Rod or Celestine, or at the very least Shimadra's staff, because your healing output might not be enough unless you have very good gear, unless you actually have some good gear. But yeah. Now there is a setup that I would be running if I had the debuffs, and it would be a setup that applies most of the time 3 debuffs on the Wyvern to greatly reduce his damage dealt. You can just pause if I go too quick. Running a setup like that is... the thing is, if you fail, it's okay, but early game, if you can manage to keep those 3 debuffs on the boss, especially attack down debuff, you will make your run so much easier, and you could just rely on those runs that you got lucky with landing the debuffs, and the boss had 3 debuffs on himself for the bigger part of the boss battle, and you will end up successfully beating him on these runs if you are really like in the lower tier of the gear. Like your CP is very low, but CP is not really that big of a deal really in this game. It's about having the right stats, and like you could have heroes 5-star in the backline most of the time, and just like a frontliner that can take the hits. So a setup like that, you could definitely be running Crozet or Basque in front. You've got that attack down, and then you would definitely run a hero, a support / damage dealer hero, like Mistychain. She's actually very good. I'll just go through her skill set in a second. She's very good. And really, like, you could use Aether as your healer, and your fourth could be Taranor Guard. That could be a setup. And to be honest, it's nothing crazy, really. Like, you could run Basque instead of Crozet. Did I really show my gear for... Did I even show his gear? No, I didn't show his gear yet. I skipped him. You cannot apply speed down debuff on the boss, unfortunately. Mistychain. This heals, and you've got unhealable and decrease attack. Decrease attack is extremely strong. That is the best debuff you can apply on a monster to increase the survival of your well, your frontliner in the case of Wyvern 11. Because this, you drop some skill ups and it becomes 100% chance and only on a 3-turn cooldown. And then you are also healing your group with skill 1 with skill 3. So she's a damage dealer, she's a support debuffer, and she's also a healer. I mean, she's not a main healer, but she is your second healer. So Mistychain with Aether would be enough to sustain your Crozet. I would definitely use Crozet if you had the option. If you can get him from the connection, definitely do it. I can get him, but to be honest, 90 elite monsters in Labyrinth, that took quite a bit of time. Reach Devotion skill grade S with 5 heroes. Now, as a free-to-play player, if you started not long ago, you didn't have access to all those free heroes in the event challenges, so you wouldn't have that unless you summon a bunch and you get lucky, let's say. But wait, you can have Ras and you can have Mercedes that do reach skill S devotion, so that's 2 already. Yeah, I mean, if you didn't have Basque or Crozet, really you could be yeah, I mean, you would just roll. If you wanted to really farm Wyvern from the get-go, I would roll Angelica to begin with. And yeah, eliminate undeads, that's fine, and you can just farm for this Callus in an adventure stage. Yeah, so you run Crozet, you run Mistychain, and you run Aether. You're fine on the healing. Now you've got 3 debuffs, and you bring Taranor Guard, and you have access to 4 debuffs. Aether applies speed down on skill 1, but like I said, boss is immune. Now there's another thing you can do, and you could be running, because Mistychain is a mage, you can be running Syra Ren on Mistychain. And Syra Ren, if this procs, it's 100% chance to, well, I mean, it's not 100% chance to apply a debuff, but if it procs 1 time out of 2, you will apply the debuff. This cannot be resisted from what I heard. So yeah, you can have 5 debuffs. Crozet is gonna be slow, so the attack down debuff from him is not gonna trigger often, but you have Mistychain, quite reliable. And Mistychain can be used in other part of the game, which is another plus. Quickly check her stats. Yeah, her speed, at least it's in the 100. She's not gonna be under attack, so it's all good. But I would definitely try to get her to, let's say you want a priority to 6-star. Like Crozet is gonna need some pretty tanky stats. You can make him very slow with high HP, health, and defense. And if you have better gear, well, you'll have more speed, and you'll need effectiveness, of course, to land his attack down debuff. But really just making him as tanky as possible, and having his skill 2 proc the barrier, it's gonna up his survival. it's gonna help out Ether and Mistychain. Now in that setup, yes, you could keep your Frontline alive, but you could not have Ether. But if you have Angelica, she could be healing with the Mistychain. And of course, if you have Rod of Amaryllis or a Celestine and you put that on Ether, it's gonna be much easier. I mean, Ether could solo heal, you know, it wouldn't even need Mistychain. But the reason I'm talking about Mistychain is because these debuffs are, I mean, the attack down is the best part. The unhealable we don't care about, but it helps you achieve that 3 debuffs applied on the Wyvern, which is gonna greatly increase your frontliner survival, because it will, well, attack down cuts the attack in half, and then it says in the tooltip that the Wyvern takes, the Wyvern deals greatly increased damage against you when he has 2 or less debuffs on himself. So greatly, meaning that it could be 50% less damage. I don't know the exact number. If you know, please let us know in the comment section. That'd be nice. If you like tested it and you you know the answer. So yeah, Mistychain makes that stage Wyvern 11 kind of a joke, because like if you don't get lucky and you get your stuff resisted, you can just do another run. If you die, it's all good, but you have way better success chance if you land triple debuffs on the boss. Now when the Wyvern goes in barrier, he's gonna take off all the debuffs on your team. Now running 4 ice heroes, the boss will not be gaining that 10% combat readiness, and you'll be able to reapply the debuffs before the Wyvern goes. And if you fail to break the barrier, well, just make sure your team is topped off and you're able to survive those double AoE attacks. The first one deals damage, and then it removes all your buffs, and then you take a massive shockwave area attack, and that's the big damage. And you cannot rely on barrier, you cannot rely on defense buff, so you need just stats, pure health and defense to be able to survive that hit. So I would say that if you're running like Taranor Guard as your damage dealer, you don't even need Taranor Guard. You can be running, to be honest, run Alexa. Don't even run defense down. You run Alexa, that poison is extremely powerful. The problem is that Alexa will not be used in multiple part of the game. So investing in Taranor Guard, you can bring him in raids, you can bring him in Banshee, you can bring him, and of course in Wyvern, you can bring him even in Guild War. I mean, arena offense. I mean, you could, if you can trigger dual attack with like Kitty Clarissa, or use some weird comp that I've been using a very early game with Raz to trigger dual attack. But I mean, anyways, Alexa is gonna be used in less part of the game. But let's say you really want to kill Wyvern 11. Those 2 poison effects are going to increase your survival by so much, because that's 2 debuffs right there and you only need 3. And then pair Alexa with Mistychain, oh my god, that fight becomes so easy. Now put Daydream Joker on Alexa, and Alexa goes twice, right? Goes twice, because every time you land a critical hit, you're getting an extra attack. So Daydream Joker is proccing twice. You know how powerful that is? Wait, 3-star. That is, well, it depends if it's max, but if it's not, anyways, this scales with, from what I understand, it scales with your crit chance and crit damage. And I know Bellona scales with defense down debuff. If you know the exact answer, if it does trigger with defense down debuff and crit damage, let us know in the comment section. Because I know Bellona scales off of all that, but like I never like actually tested Daydream Joker with all these things, like the crit damage and defense down applied on the target. But if it does work, that's like godly. She's Alexa's ice. You got those 2 debuffs. You got the Daydream Joker. But if it does work with defense down, Alexa with Taranor Guard would be very strong in an offensive scenario. But to be honest, you could also, because look, you are going to rely on debuffs to apply 3 debuffs. You can definitely just go And yeah, you got Crozet in the front. He's kind of sustaining himself with that that barrier. He's not sustaining nothing really. He's just helping out a bit. But he can potentially land that defense, that attack down debuff. Let's say it's Crozet or Basque you're running. And then you've got Mistychain with those 2 debuffs and her healing. And now Crozet with his barrier and Mistychain with her debuffs, and if you land attack down debuff, it could be enough for you to survive until that barrier phase, or even survive for let's say 2 barrier phases, because you are taking so much less damage because attack down debuff and 3 or more debuffs on the enemy, and you could be running in your offense triple kind of damage dealer. Well, Mistychain is a hybrid, but Mistychain, Taranor Guard, and Alexa, and you would be running Taranor Guard and Alexa on Daydream Joker. Crozet, you would be running him on, if you want to up his survival, you would be running Envoy's Pipe, right? This will up his survival, and it's very easy to obtain. Now, if you are lucky enough, I mean, I wouldn't run Aureus on him because he's gonna be frontlining. So unless you have to take the damage from the barrier, failing to break the barrier, he could help out, but he will most likely die because it's gonna be so much damage from your team redirected onto him. But I guess you could make it happen. The best artifact is definitely a Noble Oath to survive, to up your survival. You could also run Holy Sacrifice. If he dies and revive, and that lets you like tank another volley of fireballs, this could be a potential contender, to be honest. And this is not gonna happen, but where is it? Where is that thing? No, okay, it doesn't work, sorry. I messed up there. So yeah, all that together, you could be running that setup. And like, to be honest, if I, let's say, started a new account and I wanted to, let's say I didn't even, let's say, selective summon, I just rolled I don't know, a new account, I would roll Crozet and Taranor Guard, let's say. Then you get well, you wouldn't need Mistychain, Taranor Guard, Mistychain, and you'd have to do the quest for getting Crozet. And Alexa you get for free from the connection as well. So you could have your team right there. You could have your team right there, unless you want to reroll a bunch of times and try to get Karen or anyways, I'm gonna make like some video later on for what to roll and select summon if you want to focus on Wyvern 11. Let's say if you want to rush Wyvern 11. But first I'm gonna do it for Golem 11. So yeah, that could be a setup that is very, very powerful and doesn't need insane amount of gear. You would need very low stats to actually make it happen because you are relying on debuffs. Let's just count at this is gonna wrap up the video because it's been so long, and I've been showcasing Chaos Sect Axe, but I'm also talking about other things. I like to do it like at the end of my videos just because, I mean, might as well. I could make a separate video, but it's fine. Every time I finish my Wyvern video to showcase the unit, I'm trying to help out the community with the potential setups that you could be running. So let's just check the debuffs. You got Taranor Guard, you got defense down, right? He's boosting combat readiness when he dual attacks by 25%. But yeah, you turn off his skills because you cannot reduce the combat readiness of the boss. So that means you cannot absorb his combat readiness to get it for Taranor Guard. Turn off his skills. So that's one debuff, defense down. Now Alexa is 2 debuffs. This can go up to 100% chance, and it's on a 3-turn cooldown, and it's beautiful. And you have Daydream Joker on her. Those are 3 debuffs straight off the bat. Now add Mistychain, that's 2 debuffs right there. You are at 5 debuffs. And I mean, the attack break on Mistychain is also on Crozet or Basque. So it's still 5 debuffs, but you have an increased chance to actually land that attack break debuff. This is only a 1 turn versus Mistychain is on a 2 turn cooldown. It lasts for 2 turns with a 3 turn cooldown for that thing. But Crozet is on skill 1, so he could dual attack and trigger it, or he just attacks and procs it. You turn off the skills of Crozet as well. You don't need that skill 3 of his. You don't need that. And that would be super strong, that team. Super strong with very little stat required on your team. Now if you have the thing is, you fail your run, whatever, right? You don't lose your stamina, and you are running a triple damage dealer setup with some so many debuffs to lower the Wyvern's damage and attack break to even lower the damage further, and you have Mistychain and Crozet helping to keep that Crozet alive. And if you are lucky enough and you have Noble Oath, you put that on Crozet, it ups his survival. If you can just rely on this thing, it's gonna up his survival. It just buys you enough time to survive. Just put him like on crazy health and defense. Don't care about his speed. Just have him able to tank. Now that's one way to do it. But some players might be like, yeah, that setup, like, it might require too much gear, or it's not going to be effective. Well, if you are landing those debuffs on the boss, it's going to be very effective. And if you fail, you don't lose your energy, so who cares? And at this point, if you're going to be running a team like that, you're most likely free to play. And if you are free to play, who cares that you just failed your runs? You didn't lose your energy, you just wasted some time, but you don't have an unlimited supply of Skystones and energy as a free-to-play player anyway. So if you can down Wyvern 11, but it takes quite a few attempts, it's fine. You can still do it. And I mean, that's the best place to be. The best place to farm in Hunt. I mean, if you have the team for it. And to be honest, like, Wyvern's speed is still king in the game. It's still gonna be king for pretty much forever. So Wyvern is really like the place to go, the place to be. And you're just gonna get gear, more speed, and it's gonna make the whole comp so much more successful. And it's gonna make things so much easier. But as long as you are spending your time in Wyvern 11 and you're farming that place, you're always gonna be potentially getting some amazing drops, amazing accessories, and you know you're not getting garbage. You're not getting shifted and getting an item level 70 accessory when you could be getting an 85 one, or like your chance to get rare blue items is much lower in 11, and you're just getting, it's just the place to be, the best place to spend your energy, really. That's where I'm farming and where I'm spending my energy. But yeah, I guess I talked enough about this whole subject now. I said I wanted to make a group composition setup, but there's so many group compositions. That was just one I wanted to just talk about that will make your life so much easier. Relying on triple damage dealer with your tank, aka Crozet in front, and relying on debuffs, like it's huge. And Syra Ran, sorry guys, Syra Ran on your mage, on your Mistychain, makes it 6 debuffs. So you've got so many debuffs going that the odds of not having 3 debuffs or more on the, 2 debuffs or less on the Wyvern is actually very low. And just if you're struggling and you cannot down Wyvern 11, you just have, let's say you can only do it if you manual the run and it's very intense, like and even then your success rate is not good, or you barely do it, and like it's gonna be a pain. Just try to auto it. If you fail, it's fine, just keep on doing it and focus on building a team like that. To be honest, like Alexa is definitely not gonna be a top tier pick here for other content, but I mean, actually she can be used in Abyss. She has poison, so yeah, there you have it. Plus Daydream Joker, and with that, she's definitely gonna help you out in a lot of stages in Abyss if you still haven't completed. But we're gonna get more stages in the Abyss. We're gonna get up to stage 90 fairly soon. It's been announced. Well, not announced, but it wasn't in an interview. So yeah. So yeah, guys, that's gonna wrap up this video. Alexa, Mistychain, Taranor Guard with Crozet in the front line. If you just cannot have that Crozet survive, well, just bring Aether in to heal up your Crozet. And I would be running Crozet in the as tank, Aether as the healer, Mistychain as your backup healer slash debuffer. And at that point, I would not even bring Taranor Guard. I would just bring Alexa with Daydream Joker, because those poison effects, 5% of the target's max health every time it triggers. That's for 2 turns. That's 20% of the boss's health, unless you're in barrier, just from that thing. And yeah, you get combat readiness also increase, and you can have it to 100% chance. So it's great. Yeah, and turn off Taranor Guard skills if you're gonna go with him, and turn off Crozet's skill because you don't need that, because you cannot reduce combat readiness of the Wyvern, and this will still trigger if you have his skill turned off. Yeah, alright. If you still cannot do Wyvern 11, at this point, really, you don't have, you couldn't pull Mistychain, you couldn't pull Taranor Guard. Well, Crozet, you can get him, just work on it. Alexa, you get her for free connection. Aether, you have it, you have him for free. You have 3 heroes right there. Your 4th could be pretty much any ice damage dealer. And even if, I mean, if you don't have that, I mean, you could build Enot. You could build Enot, or you know what? You don't have Mistychain? You could bring Hazel. You get unhealable debuff, and you get some healing and attack buff. Or, I mean, if you have Akatis, if you have you probably don't have D in, you could bring Momoransi, but it's gonna require you more. It's gonna require more gear. And sleep is not gonna be like landing. But yeah, I think most players that are at Wyvern 11 probably have these heroes or can build them, so you should be all good. Just farm and farm some more, guys. All right, good luck with this whole Wyvern 11 stage. Like I said, I'll make a guide for exactly for team compositions. I just wanted to talk specifically about these 2 group compositions that you can definitely be running right now, or you could be working on building these heroes and just farm 11, because that's the best place to be in the hunts right now. So yeah, I mean, you Golem 11 is definitely good too, but you're watching this video because you want to farm Wyvern 11, so there you have it, guys. Alright, I'm Astranox. Like, comment, and subscribe for more. Press the bell icon if you'd like to be notified whenever I release a new video. And you'll see more of my Wyvern videos. They should be on the screen now. So, like I said, good luck, and peace out for now.